It's my absolute pleasure to be joined again by Operator Starsky on the channel. I would do a long rambling introduction, but actually, he needs no introduction whatsoever. But if you feel you need introduction, then please do say a couple of words, OS. And also, I should mention a belated happy birthday. It was your birthday yesterday. I wasn't able to join your live stream, but I hear that that was a tremendous success. What a great way to spend your birthday.
Hello, my friend. Thank you so much. Yeah, it was amazing because I had opportunity to celebrate my birthday online with my viewers from around the world. It was really, really fun, especially when I tried to pronounce the crazy words from their language. It was really cool. But generally, I am a former Ukrainian military. I'm a veteran, reservist. I do YouTube videos speaking about the Russian propaganda, Russian invasion, debunking all sorts of crazy things they say about Ukraine. And also, I'm an anchor at UA TV channel.
That's fantastic. UATV's grown tremendously since they rebooted the format, and in no small part, I think your involvement with that is brilliant. Um, you also do a tremendous amount of fundraising as well, and it seems that 4 year, almost 4 years in, we're at 3.5 years. Still the role of volunteers, still the role of civic society, and the wonderful people in our audience, crowdsourcing for trucks and drones and so on. It still seems that the difference between Ukraine's survival and not surviving still hinges on the efforts of lots of individuals.
Absolutely. I really wished our partners, the governments, could do a bit more because survival of Ukraine is not only survival of Ukrainian people, but also survival of democracy in Europe, and not only in Europe. Right, we're fighting against some pretty nasty terrorist regimes, and I'm not only talking about Russia. I'm also talking about such amazing uh, countries, not countries, but the governments like Iran and North Korea and China that are known for their, let's say, exotic style of governance, right? And I would really like to see our partners do just a bit more to defend ourselves, in terms of our collective security. Therefore, we still rely heavily on decent people from around the world. But luckily for us, there's a lot of those people. I believe that they make generally majority of our population, and I'm really happy that they are watching us right now.
And there's a curious thing about Russia, isn't it? It tends to underestimate some of its adversaries, such as Ukraine, and dramatically underestimate their sort of capability. And well, I think they just simply don't comprehend democracy. They don't comprehend many of the forces that are there in the Ukrainian character and were, fully unleashed after Maidan. They just don't understand that. But they also tend to sort of overestimate sort of other things, including their own strength, their own capability, their own ability to control resources and push them through aggressive means to dominate other countries. Is it your impression that the sort of Terroristan empire of Russia is starting to unravel a little bit because of this hubris, because of this overreach?
I don't know whether they like to overestimate their capabilities, right? On the other hand, of course, yeah, they expected Ukraine to give up in several weeks, and it's been soon it will be like what 2,000 something days, Um, but I believe that what they're trying to show, they're trying to present themselves as this absolutely indestructible power. Of course, it's a psychological warfare, nothing but that. Including Medvedev, threatening the West with nuclear strikes, which will never happen because, of course, Russian oligarchs don't want to kill their own kids studying and working in European countries. We all know that. But Medvedev and Dugin and all sorts of talking heads in the Russian world, they all work very, very hard to establish this image of undestructible, unstoppable Russian bear that is not afraid of anyone and things like that, which is a complete BS, as we all understand. Looking at their failed attempts of capturing Ukraine, 3.5 years they didn't manage to capture even a single major city in Ukraine, and people go like, "Oh, come on! What about Mariupol? What about Bakhmut?" Guys, Bakhmut is 7 kilometers across. It's a tiny town. There's no Berlin after Bakhmut. There's no Washington after Bakhmut. There's just fields and tiny villages populated by like hundreds, sometimes thousands of people because Ukraine is so big. And we can see that for years already, the front lines are stationary basically, and Russians are burning uh, companies after companies and battalions after battalions of their men. Uh, why it doesn't happen? Because they already burned all of their tanks and armored vehicles, and they don't have enough. So Russia is not weak, of course, but it's not as strong and as invulnerable as it tries to present itself. And I would really like people from around the world to look at Russia objectively, right? That Russia is just a terrorist regime that massively uses disinformation, of course, but at the same time, it can be defeated. And Ukraine is a good example of how it should be done.
And it's interesting, isn't it, when you compare, say, Napoleon and Hitler, who tried to look at this great landmass of Russia and sort of swallow it whole. So rather than using the size as a disadvantage, they tried to take it on as a peer. And of course, they lost. You know, the Russians love to boast about their General Frost and General Snow and all this kind of stuff. But of course, that geography is a problem for an invading army. Ukraine, however, seems to be using their little grey cells, as a famous detective once said, or fictional detective, and they're using that size and mass against Russia. They're turning it from an advantage to a disadvantage. I mean, one of the arguments there is that the long-range drones are really, utilizing the fact that Russia has literally hundreds and hundreds of strategic objectives over a vast area. They cannot protect it. They do not have the resources and capability to protect it against these kind of attacks. So how does this work, and how important is using Russia's mass against it for an eventual victory?
First of all, Russia cannot cover all of its territory with air defense. And for example, the recent expiration of their Minister of Transportation, Starovoyt, is a good example of why it actually happened, is because they could not provide enough air defense to cover all the necessary and important strategic objects in Russia. And in the end, they decided to blame Starovoyt for that. However, it wasn't really his fault, right?
Yes, he had an unfortunate incident. Sources aren't clear whether it was in his beloved Tesla or next to it or in a park where he'd, parked up. I think this sort of inconsistency is a hallmark, but I only saw this in one publication. This is kind of interesting. Do you know the weapon that was used either by him or somebody else?
Was it like a Makarov or something?
It was a commemorative gift. Literally, it's gifted by the regime to him for his services, and it strikes me that there's an extraordinary signal being sent out with that.
So now I understand how it works. They basically just give you a handgun with like one bullet, just in case.
This is it. This is it. No, other countries get a carriage clock, or you get some little gift or an Amazon voucher. No, here they give you a sort of a beautifully engraved commemorative pistol, so that you can take the ultimate sacrifice for the motherland. It's an extraordinary irony. The other official, whose name escapes me, but who died earlier in the week, that is even more, I mean, not hilarious for his family, I'm sure. Well, maybe it's an assumption. Maybe they don't grieve. Maybe they do. Who knows? But he fell out of, again, the reports say he fell out of an apartment window. He fell out of it. But what many of them leave out is that he fell out of the 17th floor. Yeah, his apartment isn't on that floor. His apartment's on the 10th floor. So, I mean, maybe the guys who are persuading him that he needed to catch a little bit more oxygen, it just couldn't count. Or maybe it's like the what's that famous film where a guy turns up to the wrong apartment block in the wrong city because he's drunk after drinking too much at the banya. Maybe it was that, he
Yeah,
turned up at the wrong apartment, and in his panic, he decided to take the shortcut down to his own apartment a few floors below.
yeah, Москва слезам не верит. However, I think
Moscow, yeah,
yeah, however, I think it was a different scenario because apparently he knew so much information, so they decided that 10th floor is not enough. It's got to be a bit higher.
he might survive. I mean, there's always a risk there, you don't want that. Should we not be reading too much into this? We know that the Kremlin has no compunction in not just killing dissidents and so on, like Nemtsov, Navalny, and others. I mean, it really doesn't care. It doesn't care what people think. It has total impunity. Um, but when they start killing people who are nominally loyal to the regime, when they start repressing people or threatening people, let's say, who are loyal to the regime, like the gold oligarch who was, denied the ability to leave the country, this seems slightly different. This seems like there's a slightly changed tempo, which is very different from the other periods of Putin's regime, where actually officials throughout the system could steal, not steal as much as they like, they could steal as much as they were mandated to steal. And there's certain unspoken rules about, how much stealing goes on. Now it seems that those same kind of protections aren't there. And even then, a few years ago, when people were caught sort of, with their hands in the till or grabbing more than they were entitled to, they'd be quietly retired off or given some, nominally symbolic position somewhere else. They rarely ended up in jail, and rarely were they killed. Are we seeing a change?
Yes, we can see this change because this trend basically started in 2022. And since 2022, there's an ever-growing list of names, those uh, mysterious deaths, or how we want to call it, of Russian oligarchs. There's something like 30 plus names, I believe, in Wikipedia. And this trend basically started in 2022. And the reason it started in 2022, again, after the Russian full-scale invasion of Ukraine, is literally because problems began to accumulate in Russia, right? Before that, look, the situation was very, very much different. Before that, they would appoint a guy, an official, a governor of a Russian oblast, for example, who had literally carte blanche. He could literally steal whatever he liked. He had the carte blanche regarding corruption, right? But he had to perform his functions. And if he failed, what Russia did previously, they would either like banish him or put him behind the bars. This is how it worked back then. They would do that like publicly, right? They would just punish him. Currently, the situation is a bit different because back in those days, they would not care much about the corruption, right, in the regions, because even though they were punishing people, but in like some extreme cases, generally they would not pay much attention to that. They would close their eyes because there was enough income for Putin and his oligarchs. There was enough income from oil and gas and other resources, primarily oil and gas. Now we can see that the situation is different. First of all, there's not enough money coming from oil and gas these days due to sanctions and other things like refineries, um, burning in Russia here and there from time to time. So they are much more furious because of that. And the other reason is that problems start accumulating. Problems don't disappear. And when you punish someone, the system doesn't change anyways. That is another reason. So when we see someone, walking out of a window, I don't know, due to gravitation changes, or I don't know, like draft, or we can see somebody shooting himself like twice in the back of the head and stuff. That is because problems accumulate, they don't disappear. And also, those people know too much. For example, if we talk about Starovoid, his story actually is very interesting because when he was a governor in Kursk and he was basically responsible for building the defense fortifications in Kursk, um, when he failed, when Ukrainian defenders incurred that region and no, realized that there's actually like nothing was made, right? All the money were stolen. The money were not really stolen by Starovoid. The money were stolen by military, right? By Russian military. Shoigu wanted like a better car, for example. So
Extra floor to his dacha, or a mudroom to imitate the Tsar.
yeah, or like I don't know, he wanted like buy his wife a better pair of shoes or something, and they stole the money. But who was blamed for that? Of course, Starovoid, because Putin will not blame generals, right? And then when Starovoid was assigned as a minister of transportation, again, he faced a lot of very, very big challenges and problems, not only related to the Russian aviation, but also other spheres like underfunded Russian railway, completely degraded logistics, and of course, the aviation that was frequently paralyzed by Ukrainian drones, not because Ukrainian drones were attacking Russian airfields, of course, but because Russian air defense failed. First of all, they of course didn't want to shoot down their own jetliners, and second of all, because they didn't have enough air defense on the first place. Because Russia is so big and there's so many different objects that require air defense protection. Some of them are very important, like, for example, those 10 castles of Putin, his 10 palaces, and each of them requires a Panzer or Tor system to be installed there to defend their Tsar. So when he faced those challenges, again, it wasn't really his fault. It was the fault of the Russian military. But they decided to make him a scapegoat and basically punish him because I think he would not survive because he could tell a lot about Russian corruption in the military. And that was the primary reason why he was basically eliminated using his own gun.
I like the case as well of the official who committed suicide earlier in the year by shooting himself 5 times, as I said on a recent episode. Now that shows real determination of the first one to kind of carry on. That really does take some extraordinary strength.
It
Um,
it was it was quite a hard attack, I tell you.
yeah. Um, But I think there's a serious point here. I mean, people will focus on these high profile suicides, but of course, what you've got here is that simply reinforces to everybody else who's left that they better not conspire. They better not even complain because they'll be next. So this by itself doesn't necessarily lead to the unraveling of the regime. In fact, quite the opposite. It probably leads to more regime security because it's ramping up the fear. What will potentially lead to regime security, it seems to me, is when Putin turns on loyalists, not because he's paranoid about what they will or won't do, but because he starts to require their resources. He starts to need their fortunes and their materials, one, to power his war, but also he has he has some loyalists who are, relatively passive. He has some loyalists who perhaps he suspects don't like the war. That doesn't matter anymore because he has other loyalists in, say, Chechnya, who are really rather nasty, greedy characters. So he may well have to, as resources dwindle, he may have to steal from one set of loyalists just to buy off another set. The more aggressive, the more murderous set.
I agree with you, my friend, but we should also consider the psychological state of Putin at this very point, because, again, if previously people, his people, right, his assigned governors could steal whatever they liked and stuff. Nowadays, the situation is different because Putin has so many problems that he cannot solve, for example, demographic situation in Russia, like uh, decline in fertility, right, in his population, social problems. There's Russian widows and mothers that keep protesting and getting arrested, of course, but this attracts attention to the problem. The people are not satisfied with what is happening. Financial problems, of course, because there's growing number of disabled Russian invaders returning home, and also paying out all sorts of compensations and pensions to the widows and mothers and relatives and yada yada. And he's trying to balance all that, understanding also that the economical situation in the country, the food prices and everything else, also requires managing, and it cannot work like that. All right, no matter what kind of country you are, but it won't work like that magically just because you told the prices to stay low. No, there are rules, right? And it won't function like you wish, especially if you are in such state as Putin right now. And what it all results into, it results into a very, very interesting phenomenon. So you can only visit your Tsar bringing him good news, right? Товарищ Putin, today we gloriously captured like a village of, I don't know, Andrusivka by sacrificing 3 battalions of your glorious soldiers. You gotta bring him only good news, because otherwise he gets really upset and angry, and it often results in things like we can see with Starovoyt, for example, because in just 2 days of failed air connection, right? In just 2 days of all those aircraft being grounded in Sheremetyevo, in Pulkovo, they've lost $250 million, which is a lot. And people get dissatisfied, people get mad because not only they cannot fly to like their I don't know, to Turkey, right, to a resort, but also they cannot tell about it to their relatives because mobile network also failed, because they shut down mobile communication every time there's a drone strike in Russia. And Putin gets absolutely mad when they visit him with bad news. That's why they prefer coming and to their Tsar, right, on an appointment with good news, and trying to appease the Tsar, like we are so good, we're doing very, very well. Um, so, in my opinion, it is possible that such actions, right, stealing from his own loyals and eliminating people who work for him, is not just a signal, all right, and it won't keep them under control for a while. I think that it actually may result in uprising, right? And I would not bet that it will happen tomorrow, but it can result in a chaos of collapse in management when the elites would demand Putin to resign, and they might stop following his orders. It may also result in a curious accident, resulting in Putin becoming a better person somewhere, in a car crash or whatever. Such cases do happen, and generally, in such cases, everything collapses very, very fast. like with Ceausescu, of course, is like a very, very good example that we would really like to see applied to Putin's situation, right?
I'd love that, but I have a feeling that it won't happen in quite that way. The idea of him being taken out and summarily, what, in front of the great bell tower in the Kremlin. I mean, that would be glorious, especially if it's filmed in a very cinematic way, I mean that, but I feel it's not going to happen. It's gonna be something like Stalin, where whether Stalin was poisoned, whether he had a stroke or whatever, people were too afraid to go in and actually save him. He's there dying, gasping for assistance. It's like, what do we do? Do we go in? Do we not? It's better just to let him, yeah, dispatch himself, as it were, because if he survives and he's angry with us, that's not good. So he eventually died in a puddle of his own piss, which is what we wish for the current Kremlin goblin.
I agree on that, and generally, like, of course, optimists inside ourselves can imagine, Putin being executed in front of Kremlin as much as we like, but facts will be different. I think that, when Putin passes away, it will be like it will probably mirror the situation with Stalin. I think that they will literally bury Putin, and there will be like a lot of people crying, and then they will say, "Well, yeah, fact is uh, like, he overreacted. All right, he overreacted. Actually, he worked well for our well-being and welfare. So now we don't have like two-thirds of Russians using outhouses because they don't have sewage. Only one-third, right? But generally speaking, he was like too harsh, all right? So probably he did something wrong here and there and attacked Ukraine, which we could avoid actually, and eventually they will start, begging for excuse time to
It
time.
wasn't us. We had nothing to do with it. That was the regime. It wasn't us.
We were following orders. We were commanded. We could not do anything. Putin was so scary. Yeah, and now we're so sorry for all those Ukrainian people that we killed with our bombs and missiles while we were like, I don't know, enjoying going to Turkey or Egypt. So this is one of the possible scenarios that I can see. Again, of course, I would really like to see the Ceausescu scenario applied to him, but realistically speaking, I think that this is something that we will see because history, one way or another, likes to repeat itself.
And if Putin's regime is, well, I think this is an interesting take on it because, in the Western imagination, it's all about, a revolution. It's all about the people rising up and expressing some kind of agency, expressing some kind of values. You and I know that that's not going to happen. That doesn't exist at any kind of scale. And a Maidan in Moscow is simply not possible. You know, maybe in the early 90s. In fact, in the early 90s, they had something not massively unlike that. I mean, far more chaotic, but you did have mass protests and you had people trying to stop the tanks when the communists tried to, when a clique tried to take back control. But they don't have the sort of the depth, I think, as it were, of a sort of democratic sense of freedom that Ukrainians do. However, what's far more likely in Russia, it seems to me, is if at some point the regime is either incapable of exerting control, is incapable of instilling fear in the elites or even the Siloviki, that is the point at which it will snap very quickly. It's the it's the failure of the regime's will to survive.
I agree on that. The question is when, because, for example, comparing Russian society to European society, I don't know, like pick any European country. Imagine this country is under attack. All right. So imagine like the hybrid warfare scenario, like the Green Man, all right, emerging somewhere in Spain or France in some of the regions and taking control over it, speaking like in French or Spanish with a bad accent, wearing Russian uniforms and saying like we are locals. I'm local French, right? And what happens next? Of course, if the country starts mobilizing people to defend the country, like the land, what will we see eventually in this country? Eventually, we will see a lot of civilian unrest because people got used to having good life, welfare, and things like that. And all of a sudden, like someone attacks them, these guys want to put uniform on you and like throw you into battle so you die and stuff, and people will get mad and upset. In Russia, it's different. In Russia, they send you abroad, right? Even though nobody attacks Russia really, but they send you abroad and you say, yes, we have to fight. We have to fight because this is our existential fight for world domination. Because otherwise, it's either we kill the rest of the world or the world collect this group of Nazis surrounding our mother Russia will be killing us. They will bring gays and black people, and Jews, and they will occupy our churches. Can you imagine a black priest in the Russian church? Can you imagine that? Or worst of all, if he's a gay, what will happen to our children? And this is why they fight, because in the end, all of that depends on your communication with your society and the way you communicate and explain problems, right? If you explain your population that, guys, we actually have to fight just a bit, all right? We will win, of course, because they're absolute imbeciles over there, right? Fighting against us using like Chinese golf carts. So here's the thing: we gotta build a bunch of drones. They will be, of course, snatching our technologies, but we will build better and better drones every single time. We'll be 2 steps ahead, and because we also have help and assistance from our allies, we'll be able to fight back. It will take time. Somebody will die, of course, unfortunately, but this is the necessary thing. That this is something that we are facing, and there's no other option for us, guys. Realize this. But eventually we will win. What we have to do is just eliminate enough of their manpower so they're not able to fight back, and then eventually something cracks in their system. Again, we will use our influence, right, our informational sources, and we will win. So that's the plan. Expect that we will win in like 3 years, all right? Roughly, roughly. It's a long time, but comparably short. And people understand and they listen to you. In case of Russia, it sounds a bit different, right? They go like, there's a bunch of Nazi and gay and Satanists and black people and Jews. And if we don't fight, they will eventually all attack us and kill us. So we have to bravely fight against French Nazi, against German Nazi, against British Nazi, against American Nazi, like our glorious grandparents did. And then eventually we will win, because no matter how many Russians will die, but we will keep going, because this is the way we fight. And Russians go like, all right. And of course, you have a chance to snatch like a new toilet or a air conditioner and put it in your apartment building in Ust-Pizdyusk, and you will be happy, right? So make your wife happy. So that is the difference between like two approaches between two countries. And Russia will not protest like people in Europe for a very simple reason, because the life in Russia is already suffering, right? The life in Russia is already a horror. People who come from other countries to Russia, they might probably notice that if you go like 50 kilometers from Moscow, you see that life in other towns besides Moscow and St. Petersburg is a bit different from what they show in Russia today, and those beautiful pictures and all those
Well, Mr.
beautiful.
Tucker Carlson's, infamous little videos from.
Yeah, yeah, those beautiful Moscovian subways. Go to Omsk, dude. Seriously, go to Omsk and check it out. You can even just Google dirty Omsk. You will love it. All right. And because the life in Russia is suffering already, they will not protest because they got used to it. They don't understand that there might be something better. When they invaded Ukraine, when they went to Kyiv Oblast, I remember those days clearly because Kyiv was under siege, right? We're fighting that region. They were so much impressed. Then when you go into a barn in on a Ukrainian farm, right? And you see that the windows in the barn where Ukrainians keep their cows are made out of glass and plastic, right? Like all modern windows in the world. They were crazy. They were making videos. They were like, look, Luda, look at this. Those holes are crazy. We have to kill them. They don't have right to live better than us, right? Those rich bourgeois. So that is literally the difference so people could understand. The reason United States failed in Afghanistan was literally that, because Afghani guys, they don't care. They got used to live in medieval times where they have nothing besides sandals and rusty AK, all right? This is their style of life that they got accustomed to. And you will not scare them with, like, I don't know, threat of death. Like, are you kidding me? Like, their whole life is basically threat of death every single day. You either die from hunger or you're getting eaten by like a mountain lion, or you die of poverty or disease. They don't care. Same with Russia, basically, on a bit a different scale, but generally it's the same.
And this is an extraordinary insight. I mean, just to point out to people that actually there are many areas of Russia. You know, they talk about the 90s being this terrible, terrible, scary period, etc. And there were aspects of it, of course, which were horrific. But I can say from my personal experience that cities like Vorkuta, for instance, looked far better in the 90s than they do now. There are many cities that have fallen into absolute degradation, which they were not in 20 years ago in those fearful 90s. I think people fail to understand that. I spoke to, as you know, I do occasionally do episodes with some interesting Russians. I don't use the phrase good Russians, bad Russians, 'cause I think that is an absolutely wrong way of looking at the world. There are some useful Russians and there are some useless Russians. You know, as you said in a last conversation, if they're fighting the Russian Empire, if they're actually in trenches with Ukrainians shooting back at Putin's forces, then they're useful Russians. I think that's about all you can say there. But this conversation, I mean, very much little surprises me these days. But one insight from a lady called Elvira Barry, who's in the US, this surprised even me because we know about sort of Stalin's terror. And when the Second World War came, it came as a relief to many people. Can you imagine that? The Second World War is relief from the everyday terror of your life because suddenly it's like, okay, it's a war and it's terrible, but we might not face as much repression. You know, we might be given a little bit of responsibility to do stuff. And it came as a relief. And I knew the struggle context of that. What Elvira said is that that same sense in 1992 could be felt because many people in Russia didn't know where the regime was going or had a sense of purpose, but there was a rising fear or sense of repression. And she said that many people she spoke to felt that the war came as a relief. Finally, we have a purpose. And that idea is so, to my mind, horrific, beyond anything I could imagine.
Of course, now they have purpose. Well, they can accidentally die, of course, right? In the field somewhere, hit by a drone. But now they have a mission in their life. And this is something that Russian ideologists are talking about a lot. Take Dugin, for example, right? or what the way Putin framed it recently in his interview, he said, wherever the Russian soldier steps, that land is Russian, basically. So it's like if you I don't know, send your soldiers to like London, right? It's a Russian territory now. People don't understand this stuff, guys. They are invaders. The whole Russian Empire literally lives, survives because they invade other countries, and they will keep invading no matter what, because otherwise they will just collapse because they have too many other problems inside of their society to deal with. And the only thing they can distract attention and survive basically is through invading other countries, Georgia, Syria, African countries, sending their mercenaries there, getting like diamonds and gold and stuff. This is the way they survive. This is the way Russian Empire became so big. Again, not because Chukchas or Yakuts liked balalaika, vodka, and matryoshka. No, it's because they were conquered and their national identity was erased, just the way they're trying to do with Ukrainians right now. Speaking of Vorkuta, by the way, I would really like our viewers to check out. I'm not sure if they have like Google Street View, but that would be an interesting experience. At least they can Google some pictures from Vorkuta because just a couple of days ago I was Googling this city, you know, I was like literally randomly pointing at the map in Russia, checking out Google Street View from different places. And um, Vorkuta is something amazing. Like, of course, it looked much better in the 90s. I agree because it was like 30 years ago, and if you don't care about your town for 30 years, then of course it might degrade, especially in Russia, especially in Vorkuta. So I would encourage our viewers to check out Vorkuta, Omsk,
It's
cities like
extraordinary.
that.
Yeah. They probably, I don't know if YouTube does translations, and I wouldn't recommend seeing, some of the recent stuff. But the while he was still in Russia, Ilya Varlamov did some interesting reportage from there and from other cities in Siberia. And these are pretty critical. He shows the rubbish, he shows the degradation, he calls out the corruption of local politicians and the sheer ignorance and filth in which people live. You know, uh, it was interesting. He was one of the last people to be ejected, as it were. And even in some of his videos, it was like, why am I not sanctioned yet? What am I doing wrong? Even my friends are starting to whisper that I'm collaborating with, the security services because I haven't been declared an inner again. The last question I'm going to come to is what we in the Western allies who say they support Ukraine, what we can do to put more pressure on Putin's regime. And if the cracks are appearing, how can we widen the cracks? But because the audience is incredibly pedantic sometimes, I'm going to have to provide a little bit of factual correction, unfortunately. The film is called Ironia Sudbi or Lokim Param.
Oh my God, how
Oh
could
my
I
God.
forget? You know, basically, it's
Well,
because I'm not a big fan of Russian cinematography, of
of
course,
course, you've
especially
every right to forget and, put it out of your mind.
Soviet cinematography, because there's so many things that were literally snatched from Western culture. For example, Winnie the Pooh, right? That is like a good example of how Russians literally take what is yours and present as if they made it. And when Russians talk about those cartoons, for example, made in the Soviet times, they say, "Oh, those American cartoons with like Tom and Jerry, they suck. You know, Donald Duck, he's so stupid. Look at this highly intellectual Russian Winnie the Pooh and Piglet and everybody else. They're like, and I have like probably as majority of Ukrainians, I have this kind of allergy, you know, to Russian propaganda, no matter if it's presented in like movies or cartoons.
I had a very drunken conversation with a group of Russians once where I was trying to convince them that Winnie the Pooh was English. And they were like, no, no, no. I mean, it almost came to blows at some point. People got very upset. No, no, there's no way. this could be English. It's just so philosophical. It's so spiritually Russian. I mean, what are you talking about? But yeah, there's many examples of that. And there are examples of, I say copying as well. There's examples of sort of, almost, I would call it almost sort of slavish adherence to Western culture, kind of worship of it without innovating. I once someone introduced me to a musician from the classical academy, and he brought his guitar and whatever, and he was very excited to meet someone who's British. This is in the 90s, and he was like, I said, the Wall album, Pink Floyd's my favorite. Can I play you a song? I'm like, yeah, that's cool. So we sat down, got some beers, and he played a song, the first song of the first double album. I'm like, that's nice. Right, let's go up and go for a drink now. Oh no, oh no. He played the entire fucking album. Like we sat there for an hour and a half, end to end. And yeah, he played beautifully, but I was so bored by the end. Anyway, um, what can Western allies and partners do to widen these cracks? Now, we know that we're done enough, and we know that Ukrainians are doing everything they can to increase the pressure on Putin. But what can we do to, ramp that up?
Of course, there's a lot of obvious things that we can do by talking to our elected officials and by posing sanctions, and those things are obvious, all right? They must be done by default. But there is another very crucial thing is communication with your relatives, with your friends, with people you know, actively participating and engaging in conversations in on the forums and the social media. This is something that unfortunately now we have to do as active members of the society, right? And there is not enough of me or Jonathan Fink anymore, unfortunately, or other amazing people. However, Jonathan does a lot of great stuff, but it's not enough because we are fighting in the era of artificial intelligence and AI-powered bot farms and things like that. And we live in the era of massive disinformation that is being spread in the social media and in the society itself. So we have to find a way to oppose it. One of the best ways is to, of course, expose Russian lies, expose disinformation, because we have all the necessary tools that we can use. On the webpage of the Propaganda Study Institute, for example, you can find this big library of Russian myths and disinformation that are easily debunked and like with several facts, so you can use those. And another thing is our governments also should put more effort into establishing proper communication with the society. Again, we should talk to people, to citizens. We should explain things to them, because there's a lot of things that cannot be told, right, due to the OPSEC. But on the other hand, we can establish proper communication with the society and explain, guys, yeah, we will have to raise our expenditures on, for example, defense budget, right? We will have to invest more into our defense, but this is necessary because, right? Because if it's not done, then all sorts of far left, far right marginal movements will use it for their own benefits. And of course, we all understand that whatever far left, far right movements we're talking about, in most cases, they receive salary in Russian rubles, right? So they will use it for their own benefits, and we cannot let it happen, because otherwise, the life as we know it will be completely destroyed, and it's very very bad, especially for people in Europe. So proper communication must be established, and I really hope that officials will listen to us, and they will put more effort into establishing proper communication, not Soviet stuff, Soviet type of communication like it always happens in bureaucratic systems, but literally proper, simple communication, explaining people their decisions in simple terms. And Europe can do that, because generally all sorts of patriarchs of public relations and communications that exist out there, they mostly come from the West, and all the Russian communication experts who are now waging this informational warfare, they were studying Western PR specialists and communication experts. So we should do this yesterday if we want to survive.
And this is part of your effort as well, fighting the informational war with sort of well, various ideas, platforms and opportunities to train people up to join the ranks of those fighting disinformation. This isn't something we necessarily should just leave to governments, so that governments can do more. This is something that people can, if they really have the will to push back, can contribute to.
Yes, yes, absolutely. But one of the most important things here is that governments have resources that we don't have. And it doesn't matter how cool we are, how amazing, what type of amazing content we can produce on our tiny social platforms. It cannot be compared to what the governments can do. Therefore, we should find a way to work with the governments directly and advise them on how they can change things, because we as content creators, we have experience, and we can share our expertise on this. So governments must do this because they have resources, and they are obliged to defend their countries as much as they can. And the communication warfare is something that they should understand, and they should cooperate with us in this field, right? Because we have reach, we have good established communication with the society. We know what works, what doesn't work. We know the way Russians conduct their informational operations. So we can reverse engineer whatever informational campaigns they're making. And we can see a lot of good examples. For example, Bellingcat, for example, Inform Napalm in Ukraine, this amazing volunteer organization that debunks Russian fakes, of course, but also reverse engineers Russian communication strategies. They research all this stuff the same as we do. And this is why governments should put more effort into working together with the people who know this craft, let's call it this way.
I hope people of influence and people who have access to resources are listening, because I think you've absolutely sort of nailed it there. And Inform Napalm were one of the first organizations that I came across when I sort of started to get interested in countering Russian disinformation back in early 2022. Extraordinary work that they were conducting even prior to the full-scale war. Operator Starsky, always an immense pleasure, always a fantastic privilege to have you on the channel and have these conversations. And I know the audience will share that sentiment too. Thank you for coming back on.
Thank you very much, my friend. Be safe.